When Akihiro Hino was a child, he loved brain teasers and puzzle books. Among his favorites was a best selling series called Head Gymnastics. So, when the success of the video game company that Hino founded afforded him the time and money to create whatever he wanted, Hino thought back to his childhood and decided that he wanted to make a video game around his favorite books. But there was one problem. The success of Nintendo's Brain Age led to a gaming market saturated with similar brain teaser games. So the question became, how can we make a puzzle game successful? It was quite the conundrum. The answer, though, was simple, and something that Hino had debated on from the get-go. Let's take all these puzzles and write a story around them. The result is Professor Layton and the Curious Village, released for the Nintendo DS in February of 2007, and the topic of today's episode. So stick around and join us for today's trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 77th episode of our Video Game Nostalgia Podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week we take a look back at one game relevant to the current week in gaming history, and we talk about it. While doing so, we hope to teach you something new about the game, what it took from the world as its inspiration, and what it gave back to the world as its legacy. Today, we're looking back at Professor Layton and the Curious Village, first released for the Nintendo DS in Japan on February 15, 2007, followed by a North American release on February 10th of 2008. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who is a cheerful and curious boy who always brings a touch of humor to every episode. My brother, Rob Casson. Rob, how are you spreading the joy today?
Yeah, I got nothing, Dave.
No joy?
Nope.
It's joyless.
You know how I spread the joy today, Dave?
Uh,
I said joy.
okay.
There, that's spreading joy.
Hey, sometimes you just have to put it out into the universe.
No, exactly. I mean, if
And
if you force it, it's not real.
That's right. And someone will pick it up.
Yeah.
Not me, but someone.
Yeah, I don't care to bring you joy. You're my brother. That's not how it works.
Maybe some of our listeners will get it. Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, hopefully joy to them. But you, Dave, suck it.
Damn.
How are you?
I was better until you just cursed me, but whatever. Shit happens.
Yeah, exactly. Brush it off.
Get with the program, Dave. Get with the program, Dave. So, what you playing this week? Obviously, startup company. Ugh.
I mean, yeah, I tried out some startup company. Did a lot of RuneScape and a little bit of Rocket League. How about you?
Was this the week that we had a not so successful night of Rocket League?
Yes, it was.
Okay, well then a little bit of Rocket League. Boo. And I played RuneScape. And I played about a half a morning of Valheim with a friend this week. So I like Valheim. I just don't really get to invest a lot of time into it, but it's a good game. And one of these days I will. So
Right on.
right on. Well, Rob, today we're looking at Professor Layton. I've played more than one Professor Layton title. Have you?
I've played a couple of them, although I didn't play them to the end. I just started them and then picked up other games because I didn't do a lot of playing on the DS at the time. Not that I do now, but
Yeah.
I just haven't done a whole lot of playing on the DS, and I hadn't really ever purchased it for a console, so I always start them and not finish.
Have you
There's a dad
seen
joke in there.
Yeah, yeah. Have you seen any of the other Professor Layton stuff than just the games?
I've like not watched them or anything, but I knew they existed. Like, I know there's like an anime or manga. Wow.
There's also a crossover with a game we've covered in the
Yeah,
past.
Phoenix Wright.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I know.
that's fascinating.
It sure is, Dave.
Well, you can kind of trace the roots of Professor Layton all the way back to October of 1998, sooner probably. Akihiro Hino, along with other members of a development team who were all working for a Japanese company called River Hill Soft, this time on a game called Overblood 2, decided that they wanted to kind of work for themselves. Now, River Hill Soft was a popular Japanese publisher back in the day. They're known for some of the early survival horror games, not really ones that came stateside, but we kind of looked at how we kind of looked at how that genre was birthed over in the United States. I think we covered that in the Resident Evil, not in the United States, in Japan. I think we covered that in the Resident Evil episode. Um, or maybe not, but that's okay. So, anyways, River Hill Soft, yes. And so they worked on a title called Overblood 2. And when it was done, Hino and a group of others decided that they wanted to kind of work on their own project. But Hino didn't really believe that he could make it as an independent developer. And so he went to Sony Computer Entertainment, SCE, in order to form a partnership. Sony agreed to allow him to develop for what was at the time the PlayStation 2 under the condition that he set up his own company. So Hino and the others decided to form a company, and the name they came up with was Level 5, which is a reference to Japanese school report cards where Level 5 is the highest mark you can achieve. It's the A,
Oh,
since we're used to A's here.
that makes sense.
Level 5's first game was an action role playing game called Dark Cloud. Dark Cloud initially reviewed very well. It sold enough copies off the bat to immediately greenlight a sequel when it came out in late the year 2000. The sequel was called Dark Chronicles. Dark Chronicles was released in 2002, and while it wasn't as popular as the first game, it still went on to sell about 500,000 copies worldwide, which at the time was pretty successful. And it was the success of both these titles together, the Dark Cloud, and Dark Chronicles, that gave Level 5 some worldwide recognition as a game developer. And as a result, with this notoriety, they were chosen to work on three different projects that would kind of shoot them into the limelight. The first was an MMORPG, which was called True Fantasy Live Online. True Fantasy Live Online was in the lineup for Xbox Live releases when Xbox Live was just kind of coming to fruition. It was supposed to be one of like the early like premiere games, the showcase games for what Live can do. Unfortunately, it kind of got caught up in development, the chaos of everything, and it was canceled before its release. Their second project, however, was much more successful. So for their second project, Level 5 was directly chosen by a game designer that we've covered before, Yuji Horii. You're a Yuji Horii fan, right?
Indeed.
Yes, you are. Yuji Horii handpicked Level 5 to develop Dragon Quest 8,
Hmm.
which was a big deal. Dragon Quest is a huge series, maybe more so, not maybe, more so in Japan than here in the United States, though I'd argue that it's got moderate success here in the United States. But yeah, so Hori picked Level 5 to develop Dragon Quest 8, and they did. The third project was it was a moderately successful RPG. It was kind of in the same Dark Cloud, Dark Chronicles, and Rogue Galaxy. You kind of all know their level 5 games. They just have a style that is very very much a They just have a style, you know. Level 5 kind of became one of the premier RPG developers, for Japanese companies. And they're still, to be fair, they're still doing stuff today. Um, they've worked on other series. I know I'm a big fan of one of the series that they work on, the Nino Kuni series, which is Miyazaki in RPG form. Big fan. Um, but yeah, so after these three projects, Level 5 was successful. They had money coming in, and they were in a position where both financially and frankly creatively, they had the freedom to do what they wanted. And so Level 5 president and CEO Akihiro Hino decided that he wanted to do something that was drastically different from what they had worked on until that point. As a child, Hino was in love with a series of puzzle books which are called, they're Japanese only, but they're translated over to the Head Gymnastics series. Now, Head Gymnastics is, as I said, puzzle books that were created by Chiba University professor Akira Tago. The first volume of Head Gymnastics was published in 1966, and since then, there have been 23 volumes that were released altogether, until the last volume was finally released in 2010. Between these 23 volumes, over 12 million copies of Head Gymnastic books have been sold, which is kind of really amazing. That when we look at numbers in the millions like that, we tend to think worldwide, but the Head Gymnastics series have never been sold outside of Japan, or translated or anything like that. So that is solely numbers in the Japanese market.
Wow.
So Hino wanted to create a game based on Head Gymnastics, based on this series of puzzle books. And so he reached out to Tago, and they came together and decided to make a game. Akira Tago himself agreed to supervise the direction of the game's development, while Hino was going to serve as the game's producer. The idea for Professor Layton and the Mysterious Village, we call it the Curious Village, but at one point it was the Mysterious Village, started with Hino wanting to use puzzles from Head Gymnastics to create a game that had story elements. Midway through development, he kind of started to second guess himself, and he also considered making just a pure game version of the books, where he literally just would take the books and turn them into a game. But with the success of, what was the DS game, the brain teaser? Do you remember the one, the
Oh man.
brain training game or something like that?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I used to do it all the time, but I really can't think of the name of it at the moment.
There was a really popular, and it's escaping me right now, and I feel really dumb. And someone's probably screaming at their radio, "It's this, you dummy!" Really popular DS brain training game. Um, and it was really successful, and its success kind of dissuaded.
Big Brain Academy
Well,
or
that's
Brain Age.
Brain
It
Age.
was Brain Age.
Brain Age
That's
is
the
the
one.
one. Yes, Brain Age is the one. Yep. So with the success of games like Brain Age, uh, Hino thought that it was just going to be a waste of Tago's talent to create a pure brain teaser game, because it was just going to get lost in it was going to get lost in all of them. And so they went back to the idea of a game with a story, which pretty much brought the project to what it has become today. With Tago's input, the idea was turned into more of a family game. Specifically, they wanted to make a game that parents would be happy to tell their children to play, thanks to its intellectual content. And so they worked back and forth, a little give and take, bouncing ideas back and forth. Tago, at this point, there were over 2,000 puzzles from the Head Gymnastics collection, so they could pull from that. And Hino actually asked Tago to create roughly about 30 brand new puzzles, specifically that were made to take advantage of the DS's touch pen functionality. So, these two guys came together, the puzzle guy and the guy who loved puzzles, and they basically took said puzzles and they created a story around them, which I think, Rob, really sums up Professor Layton very well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I definitely agree.
What how would you describe Professor Layton for someone who hasn't played it?
It's a story game, and sometimes you have to solve some puzzles.
Yeah, it is. So Professor Layton and the Curious Village is a adventure puzzle game. In it, you control the movements of Professor Layton and his young assistant Luke, the curious boy, and they are and Maria. There's one other person. You control three people in the first one, and they move around the village of Saint Mystere to locate the golden apple and solve other mysteries that arise during their search. Like, for instance, at one point you're chasing down a lost cat because the villager won't give you directions to where you need to go next until their precious cat has been found, which sounds like my life in a nutshell.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Now, the city of Saint Mystere in such a way is divided into several sections. Villagers won't give you access to the next section unless you do something for them. Solve a certain number of puzzles. In this case, chase down the cat, find something for them, so on and so forth. There are how many puzzles are in the first one? I forgot to check. I know. I want to say well over 100. Well over a
Yeah, I
hundred.
don't know the number, but I definitely it's probably definitely over 100.
Uh,
Probably definitely.
these puzzles include brain teasers and what else do they include, Rob?
Man, did you not prepare for this, Dave?
I mean, maybe 120 puzzles in the first one. So the puzzles include brain teasers, sliding puzzles, logic puzzles, and others. You get a puzzle and you solve it, and depending on how well you solve it, sometimes you get a score. They're pickerats, it's called, and so on and so forth. And you just go around. You go around. Um, if you get it wrong, you lose points, and you get the chance to do it again. You can get hints. You can find hint coins in certain places, and you can use those to get hints to do puzzles. And the puzzles are all over the place. I mean, the puzzles are all over the place. There's some super easy ones, but then there's also just some downright deviously impossible ones. The difficulty is really, really all over the place. Rob, you said you've never finished one of the games, huh?
Correct. Yeah, I just like I said, it was one of those things. I just Pokemon was the only thing on the DS that I really hyper fixated on to finish. So
I know I finished this one. I went back and I played a little bit. I still have my copy, my original copy. I went back and I played a little bit. I know I finished it because I found my old save game, but I don't never went back and finished all the puzzles because there's some ones you don't have to do, and I think there was like I want to say DLC because that's what we call it now, but at the time it was when you took your DS to like Best Buy and you could download content from like the gaming station. Do you remember when they did that?
I don't remember that, but I do remember a lot with Pokemon, them having the events. You would come and get Pokemon that would be downloaded directly to your game.
Yeah.
So I know Celebi was one of those events. You had to get the flute from mostly Toys R Us, at least for our area, and that's how you got Celebi in game. Is you had to get the Poke Flute from the event.
Yeah, this was the same concept.
Okay.
There was extra puzzles that you could only get by participating. I don't even know if it was an event. I just know that when they first came out with the DS, those demo stations that you could find in your gaming stores at one point actually like transmitted stuff you could get, and at one point it was extra puzzles for Professor Layton, if I remember correctly. So
Nice.
yeah, it, I remember the first thing that I really enjoyed about Professor Layton was the art style and the story. You know, I kind of grew up on adventure puzzle games because early PC gaming was a lot of them. You know, you had your Myst in the CD-ROM phase, and before that, I mean, hell, Text Adventure Zork, and you know, Monkey Island and Day of the Tentacle, and you know, at one point the point and click and adventure genre as a whole was booming, and it was a lot of your best games were part of the adventure genre, and so I was a big fan. But you know, by the time this came around, that wasn't a big genre, so it was exciting right off the bat to kind of have a game, because this plays like an adventure, like a point and click adventure game. You know, point and click being that you have to pick find things hidden in the screen, you know, like the hint coins, and find puzzles hidden in things, and go from that route. But and it's fully voiced. I remember that too. It's not it's a fully voiced game where it tells a story that you progress from solving puzzles, which is really cool and unique. I think even at the time it was unique. I would say it's even unique now. There's not a lot of games like that, but at the time there was nothing else like it that I remember, because Brain Age was super popular, but Brain Age was just puzzles, you know? And suddenly you had a game that like told a story in that same vein, but and what gamer doesn't like a good story, you know?
Ones who are just in it for a fight.
Like people who only play Call of Duty.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess there's some of them. But I'm a sucker for a good story, and this game wrote me in from the beginning. I think it's really charming and cute, and the story is fascinating. And the puzzles are good too, if you're into that kind of thing. I always like the brain teasers.
Right on, Dave. It is a fun game. Like I said, I'm sure that if I had more interest in playing the handheld console games at the time, other than just Pokemon, I probably would have enjoyed finishing them. But I don't know. I mean, I just, you know, some things happen.
Some things happen, some things slip through. You know, the DS had a lot of these little puzzle game titles. I remember playing them. I remember Hotel Dusk, and what else was there? Hotel Dusk was a big one. Room something. Was that Hotel Dusk room something? I think there was one where you were just stuck in a room that was separate from Hotel Dusk. God, I'm drawing a blank, but there was some really. They were able to really take advantage of the touch pen capabilities and do some cool things with that adventure genre when the DS was coming around. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
really,
know.
really fun stuff. Really fun stuff. Well, Rob, I'm a fan of Professor Layton. But when it came out, how did other people feel about it?
Well, Dave, first up, we'll start with some critics. And to start off the critics, IGN felt that Professor Layton and the Curious Village was not your usual handheld game.
Mm-hmm.
This original title lets you know right from the start just how different a DS experience is going to be. The Saint the strange little town of Saint Mystere loves puzzles. Loves them. The citizens can't strike up a single conversation without challenging the person they're chatting with to solve a brain teaser. Even when there's murder afoot, no one can seem to take their mind off of some challenging head scratchers. Find a penny on the ground? Solve a puzzle about pennies. Look at a clock. Learn a clock related puzzle. See a cat licking himself. Hey, there's a cat licking puzzle. Well, not really, but you get my point.
That'd be funny.
Yeah, no, indeed it would. Professor Layton in the Curious Village is essentially a huge assortment of textbook puzzle games strung together by an old school point and click adventure. Puzzles range in difficulty from the absolute obvious to the downright devious. As long as you don't cheat, you're golden. But I know you guys. You're going to do it. All in all, Professor Layton is undeniably fun with a great style, and if the next game in the series is as challenging and as addictive as its debut, bring it on.
That is very much a great description of Professor Layton. It's a huge assortment of textbook puzzle games strung together by an old school point and click adventure. I mean, that's almost a perfect description of how it is. And yeah, I mean, it is. It speaks to everything I was just saying.
Yeah, it's pretty spot on.
All right. What else we got?
We have GamePro who felt that the narrative powering Professor Layton is definitely one of the game's strong points. The art style is eye catching and brings to mind the classic animated film, The Triplets of Belleville. It definitely serves as a nice platform on which the game's many mysteries are built. Besides the main mystery of the hidden treasure, there are all sorts of other secrets to unearth in the town of St. Mystere. What sort of creature is haunting the clock tower? Is there a murderer on the loose? And how do these mysteries relate to the dead man's treasure? In order to get to the bottom of these confounding conundrums, you have to solve a variety of logic puzzles. Most are presented to you by the town's interesting cast of characters, but others are hidden around the levels. You can find them by tapping around the various levels with your stylus. Doing so also unearths clue coins, which let you buy hints that can give you a leg up on difficult puzzles. And you'll need every single one of them because some of the puzzles in Professor Layton are ridiculously difficult. And really, that's the game's biggest fault. Some puzzles are fairly easy and can be solved in a matter of seconds, but there are some puzzles that will confound you for long stretches. Worse yet, they're sometimes so tedious that it almost felt like doing homework. Just a terrible thing. No.
Yeah.
For all its frustrations, Professor Layton does have its merits. The overall vibe of the game is charming and immensely likable, and the basic game mechanic is solid. There's also a ton of things to do. Aside from the puzzles, there are other neat extras that it'll let you discover on your own. Even if the uneven difficulty robs the game of some of its fun and the slow, methodical pacing might lull some gamers to sleep, for puzzle lovers and brainy gamers, Professor Layton definitely has a lot to offer.
I yeah, I agree.
Do you,
Uh,
Dave?
I do. I think I've established that already.
Well, I don't know. It's you might have had me fooled there.
Maybe, maybe not. Who knows?
Well, next up we have Nintendo Life, who gave Professor Layton a 9 out of 10, writing that Professor Layton and the Curious Village is unquestionably one of the best Nintendo DS games released thus far. If you enjoyed games such as Brain Age or Phoenix Wright, you'll be more than satisfied with this puzzling adventure. Naturally, once you've solved all the brain teasers and finished the story, there's very little to come back to. But you'll have had so much fun getting to that point that you're unlikely to mind. With the game receiving heavy promotion throughout the world right now, you'd be silly not to invest in it.
So critics were kind of mixed. They found good points and bad points, right? Like, hey, we like this game, we recommend it, but be wary because the difficulty is all over the place.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
that's
that's
definitely a fair
I
fair
think
assessment.
I mean that was the one thing everyone kind of talked about. This guy said uneven difficulty, but everyone kind of talked about in one way, shape, or form how some of the puzzles were. I think the first guy said absolutely obvious or downright devious.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and that's a fair point.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of them were stupid easy, and then some of them, like one guy's probably right. We probably did cheat. So
I mean, and it's more off. I think that the inconsistency of the difficulty, because I mean, a lot of games that we play start out stupid easy and then get incredibly difficult. I mean, I remember Trauma Center on the DS is one of the games I tried beating, and although the beginning was super easy, I don't think I ever was able to beat the one that I played because the last boss was just so freaking difficult for me.
I like Trauma Center. I still have that game too.
Yeah, I know. I borrowed it from you. That's how I played it.
Got it.
But I think it's the inconsistencies of said puzzles because I mean, you know, a hard one could be thrown in before a couple really easy ones, and maybe that's just to keep people wanting to keep going. But I don't know. I don't
Well,
know. But you know what? Critics are obviously going to feel one way, but around here, there are other people we want to ask.
yeah, how did users feel about it?
Well, Dave, let's talk about that. So, Bu- user Bukensha on Metacritic felt that the adventure puzzle game really surprised me and was in fact the reason why I bought a DS console in the first place. The majority of the puzzles are really fun and well balanced, with only a couple of instances where the puzzle explanation is not very clear. The nice story, marvelous setting, and fun characters, all of which are supported by gorgeous graphics and nicely fitting music, do their work also. What's incredible about this title is that it can attract people of all kinds and of all ages, and each of these categories will find their share of fun and challenge. If I had to find a flaw in this game, it's the fact that most of the puzzles are completely unlinked to the plot. And above all, the graphic styles used in the puzzles differ too much between them. It would have been nice to have a little more graphical coherence in this game, but apart from this, the game should be played and finished by anyone possessing a DS.
You know, I never really thought about the fact that the graphics are different, but that's kind of a valid point because on one hand, you have these really cute hand drawn like story, like it, you know what it's kind of like, and I guess I'm just so used to it. Early PlayStation games, when you'd go from the full motion video when I started doing it, like to the handcrafted polygons, like just
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, the cool cutscenes and then the not so cool walking around to get to the next cutscenes.
yeah, that's kind of what it's like, though not nearly as drastic.
No,
So
I definitely say that that's a good way to put it. I mean, but I don't know. It is definitely kind of I didn't really think of it till now, but it is kind of a drastic difference between one and the other. Maybe not severely as it was in the PlayStation days, but by then graphics were also slightly better.
yeah, but realistically, how do you make the puzzles seem cute? Because they're just puzzles in the end. They're
I mean,
brain.
you put like cute little borders around them or cool little background stuff or
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. There's options. People make stuff cute every day, man.
All right, you win. What else
Yeah.
we got?
Well, Dave, so obviously Bukensha felt really good about the game. But on the other hand, Spars Kringaren on Metacritic felt that they can't really understand how this game can get such good reviews. First of all, the story is very uninteresting, so they found themselves clicking it away just to get to the puzzles. Some of the puzzles are fun and creative, but it's not enough. Many puzzles are boring and uninventive, and while some of them are very logical, some are not. But that's just a matter of taste and logic, I guess. The biggest problem is that none of the puzzles are related to the story. This makes the gameplay very lame. It's basically a graphics novel with some random puzzles crammed into it without any kind of connection. And since the graphic novel isn't fun or interesting, it's utterly pointless. So the only real fun in the game is the puzzles, which isn't enough to keep me interested. Also, there's nothing that makes it worth playing the game on the DS. It would fit much better on the PC where you can click with your mouse. Pointless. Boring.
Okay, dude.
I mean, I can see the arguments, but it did seem a little little out there.
I think there were some puzzles that were connected to the story.
I obviously didn't finish enough through it to be able to say, but I mean, it seems to be a common consensus with people that both loved and hated the game at this point that there was some stuff that didn't really tie well together. And I'm sure that the creators, although they obviously did a wonderful job with the legacy that we will talk about, but they obviously had flaws.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is. Can't make
Yeah.
not every puzzle, oh, a puzzle about walking. I mean, How many of those can you do before it just gets not cool?
Right. Agreed.
Right on. So next up, we'll talk about Justin B on Metacritic, who felt that this is a great puzzle game with a decent story attached to give it its own unique feel. The graphics are very stylish and creative, including both the in-game graphics and interwoven animated cutscenes. The music tends to get a bit annoying, as the same music seems to play throughout the majority of the game. I found myself turning the volume down on some puzzles because it was affecting my ability to concentrate on the problem. The main part of the game, the puzzles, are challenging enough to keep you interested throughout, and some are downright hard. Overall, I would recommend playing this game, and I look forward to seeing the next game in the series, released on this side of the Pacific as well.
He got his wish.
Yeah, no, a few times over. So last up, we have Mr. Sonic Fan, who, quite frankly, was also not in love with the game. And Mr. Sonic Fan wrote, I really don't understand the love that this game gets whatsoever. The story is not interesting in the slightest, which is one of the most important parts about the game. First off, it takes forever to start the quest that the main characters came to the village for, as the game drags it out with such things as finding cats. It's bothersome. I don't find the characters in the village memorable in the slightest. I find them very boring. To be honest, the only reason I sat through this was because I enjoyed the Phoenix Wright vs. Layton game that released earlier this year. I enjoyed the puzzles in that game, but in this game, Curious, I cannot stand the puzzles. Some of them are really tedious and bothersome. Graphically, the game is alright. The characters are decently animated and drawn, and the backgrounds look nice. The animated cutscenes by Japanese animation studio PA Works look decent enough, though they have some really obvious and distracting looking 3D CGI in them. The game's soundtrack is, for the most part, in my opinion, quite forgettable, with the only track I personally like being the game's main theme. The voice acting, on the other hand, is pretty well done. Though, I will say I can't stand Luke's actress in the American version of the game. Thankfully, I have the British release, in which Luke was pretty well done voice work. Overall, I don't understand how people like this game. With an uninteresting story, with forgettable characters, some very tedious puzzles, and for the most part, a forgettable soundtrack, I did not enjoy this game.
Ooh. I guess
Well,
it's not for everyone though, huh?
no, but I'm gonna guess this is also a person who just really enjoys Sonic, and I mean,
Mr. Sonic Fan. Yeah,
yeah, if you like Sonic, this game's a little slow.
it
You're
is.
not gonna go faster.
Everything's going to be slow next to Sonic.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right there, Dave.
Everything's going to be slow.
Well, Dave, tell us what happened after this, because I did mention the legacy, and obviously, Professor Layton's still a thing, and even Mr. Sonic Fan mentioned the Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright game.
That's right. But let me ask you this: is Professor Layton still a thing?
I mean,
It's been
it's
a while.
2018. I guess that's fair.
Yeah. You know, the first one though was really a commercial success. Professor Layton and the Curious Village had sold over 700,000 units in Japan alone. And when it was localized and released here in the United States in 2008, for at least the first 3 weeks of its release, it was the top selling DS game in the United States. It won its share of awards too. At the 2008 Spike Video Game Awards, it was awarded the Best Handheld Game of the Year, and GameSpy named it their Best DS Game of the Year as well. So there were some game journalism publications that recognized it for what it was. And as you said, it was the start. It was the beginning to a whole series of video games. By the time Professor Layton and the Curious Village, the first one, was localized and released in the United States in February 2008. They had already released the second game in the series in Japan in late 2007, and at the time the third game in the series was already being actively developed. And as of now, as you put it, the last one being in 2018, there are 9 games in the series, with one that has crossed over with, as you put it, Phoenix Wright. Crossed over with Phoenix Wright, which is a game that we've covered in a previous episode. Not only did we cover it, but we had a guest for that episode who killed it.
That he did.
Yeah, that man knows his Phoenix Wright.
Indeed.
Knows his Phoenix Wright. Cool dude. Cool dude.
Yeah.
In 2012, they released Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, where they combined the puzzle elements of the Professor Layton series, as noted here, with the trial mechanics of the Phoenix Wright games. There has also been one feature length anime film released for the series, Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva, which was released in 2009. And back in 2018, speaking of that year, there was a TV series released. It was based off characters off of the last game that was released, and they have released about 50 episodes. 50 episodes. So yeah, there you go. There's also been 3 novels, a
Manga.
manga series. Thank you. Manga, bango, bongo. Yeah. So, I mean, Professor Layton's kind of a thing. Just like Phoenix Wright's a thing. They took Phoenix Wright and it was a TV show and a movie and all sorts of stuff too. Japan's really good about taking these anime games and making them into like a whole thing. But you know what? Let's be fair. That trend started with Pokemon, and well, Pokemon's the biggest multimedia franchise in the entire world. So you can't exactly blame a guy for trying with everything else.
Yeah. I mean, all I have to say to that is Pokemon Jets.
It's still the greatest thing ever. Still, Pokemon Jets are still the greatest thing ever. And if you don't know what we're talking about, go back to our Pokemon episode. Of course, you can do so by checking out our website at www.memorycardlane.com. On memorycardlane.com, you can also find, I'd say, a calendar of upcoming events, but I still haven't updated it, so I'm bad. I need to do that. You can find our show notes. The most important thing is to find our old episodes and to find our show notes. I post let's plays for this stuff that I find and like. I post all my sources. So if you want to do any more research, if you want to find out all about the TV series or that, you'll find the links where you can dig into everything. If you're anything like me, you like to know more and more and more, and I just can't cover everything here. So I give you the resources on the website to be able to do so yourself. Also on our website, there's a link to our Patreon if you want to contribute to our podcast, and a link to our Discord where you can join us, play video games, scream at me. I particularly like that last one. Come and scream at me. Do what you want.
Yeah.
So,
Ah.
and links to our social media, right? I'm on Twitter at David is wrong. Rob, what you doing these days?
I can be found on twitch.tv/FATBOIRIPZ.
Here you go. There you have it. Well, Rob, I think we did it. I think that's Professor Layton. What do you think?
Uh, yeah, no, I think we did a pretty good job talking about a story game with some puzzles thrown in, or a
I
puzzle game with some story thrown in.
I liked Professor Layton. I thought it was cute. I understand the disjointness that people feel. I understand the the fact that the puzzles are all over the place for difficulty. I get all that, but I think for what it is, it's good. Someone took a series of brain teasers, and they tried to make a story around it, and expecting perfect cohesion is probably asking a whole lot. If you want perfect cohesion, it becomes a game mechanic. Kind of like how a certain game could be based around time travel or stuff like that. Um, or there's a modern puzzle game called The Witness, which is based around specific game mechanics. But then when you do it that way, the puzzles are all based on that one game mechanic, and they don't allow for a lot of variety. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So I think for what it is, I think for when you're trying to make a game around a series of brain teasers, I personally think they did a good job. I do, and I really enjoy Professor Layton. I've played a couple of them, and I don't feel like they've ever really let me down. So yeah, that's my hot take. What's your hot take, Rob?
Well, Dave,
You got anything to add about Professor Layton?
I mean, you've obviously put more time into them than I have, and know a lot more about them. And I gotta trust what you got to say in this.
Very, very true. Very, very true. Well, I think then we'll call it there. Each week we choose one game relevant to the current week in gaming history, and we try to teach you something new about that game. We try to teach you about the inspirations that allowed it to come into fruition, and we talk about the legacies that our games leave behind. And as part of this discovery process, we like to talk about what we've learned. And yeah, so Rob, what is your biggest takeaway from today?
I guess that would have to probably be that the game is because of a series of puzzle books. I mean, I guess in theory it makes sense when you really think about it, but I don't know. It's just kind of cool to know that literally just a book of puzzles was enough to create a pretty cool game series.
Yeah, do you remember puzzle books? Like, mom probably used to buy them at the dollar store, and you would just flip through them, and there were crosswords and word searches and all sorts of other. That's kind of what I think of.
Yeah, same here. That's exactly what I'm thinking of, and to know that someone just took that and was able to create a game around it. That's more than just more puzzles on a game, but an actual game designed around the puzzles. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, and I think it's a really charming story. I do. It could have been really plain and bad, but I think it's, despite all the gripes and disjointedness, I think it's a charming story. So yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I feel I had no clue that it was based on a book series. That was probably my biggest thing too. For what it's worth, all those games that were coming out then, like Brain Age and all them, you just kind of think that, hey, we took this concept and out of thin air we did it. But realistically, this guy went to an author of a book series that he grew up loving, and was like, hey, I want to take these puzzles, this concept, and create a game around it. And they said, okay, cool. Well, how can we be different from everyone else? Well, let's make a story. Done. Yeah, I thought that was really enjoyable too.
Yeah.
So that's Professor Layton, and that'll do it. So Rob, before I take it out of here, what would you like to add? Is there anything that you'd like to add to today's episode?
Well, Dave, I'm going to take a moment to say thank you so much to everyone for listening. We're here week after week so far, still enjoying what we're doing, and we're hoping that you're hoping. We are
Hoping
hoping
the
that
great.
you're listening, maybe not week after week, maybe you do all of your binging, you get, 5 episodes done in a sitting, or maybe you do one a month and you're really far behind and need to catch up. But hey, whatever your take is, even if this is your first one, thanks for being here.
True statement. Well, on that note, let's look ahead to next week. In retrospect, it's really hard to think about the fact that when this game initially released, it sold incredibly poorly and was really seen as a failure. Nowadays it is a game that we consider to be a pioneer of the Metroidvania genre. It has inspired so many games after it. It basically reinvented the series in a lot of ways that it's based on. Um, it's pretty universally loved nowadays. In fact, it's a game that now is often cited by critics as being one of the best video games of all time. But it didn't start out that way. Like I said, it sold poorly. When Castlevania Symphony of the Night first released, way back in March of 1997. Uh, wow, we're already into March.
Yeah. Well, not quite, but almost.
Oh man, yeah. When Castlevania Symphony of the Night was released way back in 1997, it didn't start out well, but it got there. Now, truth be told, I'm a huge Castlevania Symphony of the Night fan. It's probably one of my absolute favorite Castlevania games. It's one of those rare games that I can honestly say I played all the way through more than once. Back in the day, that was a thing. When you liked a game, you played it over and over and over again. So, I particularly am a fan and have a lot to say. And we'll see what y'all think. We'll go through our usual review, critic review, user review. So yeah. Rob, you ever played Castlevania Symphony of the Night?
I have not yet, Dave. No.
Oh, you can download it modern. You really owe it to yourself if you like Castlevania games. It's an excellent addition. So that's
Guess we'll have
assuming
to find out, Dave.
That's assuming you like Castlevania games. Anyways, so next week we're going on a quest to kill Dracula. So get out your garlic, get out your steaks, and let's play a Symphony of the Night as we take a vampire hunting trip down memory card lane. Do the thing.
Doo doo ba 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 boo